Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Low Tide City 2024, which was the biggest event of the weekend, coming in at a B+ here, and it's also going to be the final Low Tide City, so big send off to this event. And honestly, I couldn't have thought of a better way to close this series out, because the tournament was really enjoyable to watch. For our top 16 finishers, you're going to have Wilds, Spritzy, Burr, and Beastly in 13th, Chase, Omega, Kobe, and Atata in 9th. In 7th, you have Shadic and Jordan. 5th is Geist and Teaser. 4th is PEABNUT. 3rd is MUTEACE. 2nd is LIMA. And winning the entire thing was DABUZZ. So we got to talk about the top 8 seeds that did not get into the top 8. The first one is going to be Anathema. He didn't show up. Fairly self-explanatory. The second one is going to be MVD. He ends up losing to Geist in the winner's side Game 5 in Bayonetta Snake. So huge props to Geist for that. We'll talk about that when we talk about Geist a little bit more. And in the loser's side, he ends up falling to Burr in another Game 5 set. And KAZUYA Snake is honestly a really interesting matchup for me, because I'm not super sure who wins it. If I had to pick one, I would slightly lean towards Snake, just because he is going to be doing a lot better in the neutral, and he has a similar damage output to KAZUYA. He's not going to be struggling to get the kill versus the character. He can edge guard him very well, but KAZUYA still has electric, and he is able to punish Snake in the disadvantage state, because every move that character has is going to be smacking Snake right out of that cipher. And overall for this event, MVD getting 17th place isn't the end of the world. It's still a pretty solid result, and I've honestly been pretty impressed by MVD recently. I think he is a player that is fairly underrated, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him top 8ing his first major of 2024 in these next couple of events. Snake is a really good character in the current meta, and I just have a lot of faith in him. And the other top 8 seed that didn't get in there is going to be Capitancito. He ends up falling fairly early on to Teaser, and Teaser is playing Samus. Samus is pretty much just the blueprint for Me Gunner, but if they made it worse, Me Gunner is Samus at home, so you honestly can't feel too bad about that one. And he wins a couple sets in the loser side, but he ultimately falls to Omega in a Game 5 set. Omega got upset fairly early on. We'll talk about his run when we talk about that. But Capitancito, 25th. It's not the end of the world. Obviously not an amazing placement, especially considering he got 2nd place at the last Low Tide City, but this one was a little bit bigger, and Me Gunner still isn't an amazing character, especially relative to some of the really good characters in this game, like Samus or Joker. Capitancito is easily the best Me Gunner player in the entire world, and one mid-result doesn't really change that. And before I hear about it in the comments, Collision obviously didn't count for MVD season. Like, everyone knows that. And we're going to be staying within the top 8 for a majority of this video, just because this event wasn't super massive, so that's where a majority of the interesting runs ended up. But there are a couple that were pretty notable that I want to touch on, and the first two are going to be coming from the best losers runs of the tournament, at least that didn't get into the top 8, and that is going to be Kobe and Omega. Starting off with Kobe, he's going to end up losing to Atata in the winner's side, and then he beats Dark Angel, Huapi, Doorstop, and Spritzy before falling to Shadic. And running into Shadic is definitely pretty unlucky, considering the form that that player has been on recently. And I have no idea who the best youngling player in the world is at this point. I think Kobe's in contention for the title. Suinoko's really good. If I had to give it to one player, it would probably be Super Sebi, but this is definitely points in Kobe's favor. This is a super solid run. 9th place at a B+ tier is nothing to sneeze at, so massive props to him for that one. Still fighting for the youngling players, because I know that character is better than Toon Link no matter what people are telling me. And the other loser's run is going to come from Omega, and this is arguably the best run of the entire tournament, because he loses it in the pools phase to Sense, so shouts to Sense for that one. But then in a row, he beats Billy Stylus, which is a fire name. Shouts to them for that one. Buondon, I believe that's how you say that. Firefly, Capitancito, Ned, and Burr before falling to PEABNUT. And Mega Man Joker is not fun for Joker. We've known that since Kameme beat MK Leo at Evo, but Omega is a player that I have been very impressed by recently. I think he is one of the future top talents of America. I mean, he's already one of the top talents of America, but I'm talking like top 10, maybe even top 5 status. I think this player is incredible. He's from a really strong region, so he's able to get that practice, and I feel like the second he top 8s his first major, it's over for everyone else. And I want to talk about the two KAZUYA players that ended up getting 13th place at this event in Burr and Wilds, because it's not too often nowadays that you see KAZUYA players get super deep runs at these big events, and obviously it still happens. Riddles has a bunch of very good results. Midu has that crazy run at Meisuma Ultimate 2022 where he ends up getting 2nd place, but on average the character has been performing much worse, and we all kind of expected this just because he is so one-sided in what he is good at. Yes, on hit he is incredible, but in every other aspect of the game he is pretty weak, so you have to be better than your opponent in the neutral oftentimes to actually secure your dubs, and Burr and Wilds were able to do that at this event. You're going to have Burr losing to Doorstop, and then he ends up getting wins on Shadow PR and MVD, as I mentioned before, falling to Omega. And KAZUYA versus Joker feels like a very difficult matchup for KAZUYA, just because the best part about Joker is going to be his neutral. I don't know how KAZUYA deals with gun. I don't know how anyone deals with gun, but especially KAZUYA, and a player like Omega isn't going to give you those free hits, but he did have a pretty competitive set there, managed to take it to a game 4, so shouts to Burr for that one. And I gotta talk about Wild, because this kid is incredible. He gets a really nice upset over Beastly, then he ends up falling to DABUZZ, and you can't feel too bad about that when DABUZZ is really good versus KAZUYA, and he's beaten Riddles before. In the loser side, he gets a win on Grayson, and then ultimately falls to Atata. Wild is like 1000% going to be one of the future top players in Smash Ultimate. He is just overall getting much better every single event that he goes to. He is still extremely young, and he's already getting better results than I could ever dream of, so he's got a very bright future ahead of him. And the final person I want to talk about before we get into this top 8 is going to be Atata. And before I hear about it in the comments, I know I talked about every 9th place finisher aside from Chase, but I have a segment in the upcoming video where I'm going to be talking about Chase in detail, so I don't want to do it twice, and that's my excuse. But let's talk about Atata, because he has a very nice run at this event. First things first, he's able to get a pretty solid upset over Kobe. Then he ends up falling to PEABNUT, and I don't think that's a very good matchup for Ness, even though he has a lot of stuff that he can reflect. Mega Man is just so good at keeping that character out, and the second he goes off stage, he's just going to die back. There's such a massive dish showing that it's just very difficult to get back. But in the loser side, he picks up wins on both Smirk and Wilds before falling to Geist in a very competitive Game 5 set. And Ness is a character where I don't really know where he fits into the meta, because the damage output of the character is crazy. He has amazing killing, but he's kind of stubby. Even though he has this choice, his recovery is really bad. The disadvantage state can be pretty rough. Even though he's super floaty, he just takes a while to get down, so you have a lot of aerial drift. But if you have a corn up air, for example, it doesn't matter how much drift that you have. Ness is overall a good character in my opinion, but even with good characters, getting 9th place at a tournament like this is very impressive. And that title for the best Ness in America is kind of up for grabs right now, just considering that Send hasn't been going to as many events. And with this run for Atata, he's kind of cementing himself as the front runner for the character, at least in America. We all know that Gak is like the best. So let's get into this top 8, and if there's a player that I missed and you want to know how their run was, just leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to tell you how it was, and be sure to sub while you're down there. But our 7th place finishers are going to be Jordan and SHADIC. Starting off with Jordan, he's going to pick up wins on Sense and TLC before falling to MUTEACE in the winner side, but gets a really nice upset over Chase to get into that top 8, where then he falls to PEABNUT. And if anyone is unfamiliar with who Jordan is and who he plays, I don't know. He played Wario at this event. He played Mario, Cloud, Donkey Kong, Banjo, and those are just the ones that I saw. He has a whole smorgasbord of characters. I'm pretty confident that Wario is going to be his primary character, but clearly very well versed at the top level of this game. And I can definitely appreciate someone who's playing a bunch of characters, because I think it just makes you better at Smash Ultimate, because you're not relying on the crutches that certain characters are going to give you. Like, I think Zero Suit is the best example of that. Zero Suit players are going to have a really bad habit of just flip kicking all the time, because it's a get out of jail free card. But if you're just someone that's playing Zero Suit, you're probably going to be a lot better at using that tool, because you know how to not rely on that tool. And maybe that's not the best time to bring out those characters when you're placing world-class players like MUTEACE, like PEABNUT, but my counterpoint to that would be, I enjoyed the Donkey Kong, I enjoyed the Banjo, so thank you, Jordan, for pulling them out, and shouts to him for the run. But the big topic of this tournament is going to be SHADIC falling at 7th place. He's going to pick up wins on Smirk and Shu before losing to Teaser in a Game 5, gets into the top 8 with a win over Kobe, but falls to Geist in another Game 5, and on paper, these do make sense that SHADIC is losing. These Samus and Bayonetta, I do think, are difficult matchups for Korn, because Korn as a character has one really big flaw, and that is going to be her mobility. And in most matchups in this game, it really isn't that big of a deal, because you have this massive sword that makes up for it. Your mid-range is just so much better than every other character. But when you have a character like Samus, who has Charge Shot, can play outside of your mid-range, or a character like Bayonetta, who has Side B, it's just very difficult for Korn to actually get in versus those characters and utilize her crazy damage output. And this is going to be SHADIC's first performance of the season. Is it going to hurt him too much? In my opinion, no. He is going to take an unranked loss to Teaser and a pretty probably unranked loss to Geist as well. We'll have to see how the rest of those seasons unfold, but it is only going to be a regional. It's still a top 8, and he's definitely still going to be a top 10 player player by the end of the season. Maybe not in that top 5, but to be honest, I'm pretty confident that he's going to bounce back. So I wouldn't be too worried about this if you're a SHADIC fan. Our 5th place finishers are going to be Teaser and Geist. Starting off with Geist, he's going to pick up wins on Hwampi MVD before losing to Lima in the Bayo Ditto. Ends up getting a win on Atata to get into that top 8, and then he gets that really nice win over SHADIC. And as I already said, it is a matchup where I would favor Bayo, and SHADIC has a really bad record versus Lima, so it's not super surprising that he would end up losing this one, but he's also like a top 5 player in the world. This is an amazing win to have on your resume, and after that, he ends up losing to MUTEACE, but honestly, this was an amazing tournament from Geist. Like, he loses to the best Bayonetta player in America in the Ditto, whatever, and then to MUTEACE, who has so much experience against the best Bayo player in America. He is very good at the matchup. I would easily say that Geist is the 2nd best Bayo in America, probably the 4th best Bayo in the entire world. It's kind of tough to say because there are so many amazing ones, but he's been very impressive, and that SHADIC win makes his resume look that much better, so props to him for the run. And Teaser, pretty much out of nowhere, this guy comes out of retirement and just farms. Beats Capitan Chase and SHADIC to get into the top 8 through the winner's side. And once he does do that, he ends up losing to Lima and PEABNUT. But incredible run from him. He had a huge hiatus before this. Just comes out swinging. And who's the best Samus player in America? I honestly have no clue. Icymus is super talented, but I would say that this is the best run a Samus player from America has had. Obviously, you're still going to have players like Yaura and Siski in contention for the best title in the world, but if Teaser starts going to more convents and starts getting upsets like this consistently, I don't see why he can't be the best. In 4th place, you got PEABNUT. 3rd place, MUTEACE. PEABNUT picks up wins on Skits and Atata before falling to DABUZZ, and I really don't like that matchup for Mega Man. Rosalina Downbeat pretty much just invalidates him as a character, and Luma eats up those pellets like it's Thanksgiving dinner, so he falls down to the loser's side, gets a win on Omega to get into the top 8, as well as beating Jordan and Teaser before falling to MUTEACE. And PEABNUT is easily the best Mega Man player in the world. We've known this for a while now, basically since Cirque, and there are other good Mega Man players, of course. Repo's very good, Kameme is very good when he plays the character, but they just don't have the highs that PEABNUT has. MPG as well, I gotta give him a shout out, and I still think that PEABNUT has a long way to go. I have so much faith in this player. I think he's nowhere close to his ceiling, and I also think Mega Man is nowhere close to their ceiling. Some of the Metal Blade combos that you can do with this character are ridiculous. You can get like 50% off Metal Blade footstool into a kill off up tilt. Like, it is very ridiculous. I think PEABNUT is going to continue pushing this character into the beyond, and I'm honestly really excited because I appreciate that good Mega Man gameplay. Speaking of good gameplay, you got MUTEACE in 3rd place. He picks up wins on Firefly, Doorstop, and Jordan to get into the top 8. Once in the top 8, he ends up dropping to DABUZZ, and that makes sense historically. That's been a very difficult matchup for him. He does pick up a win at Cirque, but aside from that, it's been pretty much DABUZZ's favor, so makes sense. He gets wins on Geist and PEABNUT, though, before falling to Lima, and as I kind of said earlier, they have played so many times before that it's really just a coin flip matchup. When you have players of that caliber with like plus 30 sets played, it's just super hard to predict who's going to win because it's a lot less character versus character and a lot more player versus player, and today, Lima was just the better player. And our grand finalists are going to be Lima in 2nd and DABUZZ in 1st. Lima's going to pick up wins on Lil Bro, Ned, and Geist to get into the top 8. Once in the top 8, he manages to beat Teaser before falling to DABUZZ, beats MUTEACE to get into the grand finals, resets the bracket versus DABUZZ, but ultimately falls in that 2nd set. And Lima is a player that I feel like often does not get his flowers because he is so insanely good at this game. And I did have him as the best Bayonetta player in the world. I'd probably give that title to Tama P now just because he got 2 top 8s at Peaches. I feel like you gotta give it to him, but Lima is still a close 2nd, and then of course I would have Bloom in 3rd, and it's kind of tough for Bloom just because he has less exposure than the other 2 Bayos, simply just because there are less events in Europe, but it's also really hard to compare these players because they play so differently. Lima is trying to nickel and dime you, he is camping you, he's waiting for you to make a mistake. Bloom is playing footies, he's in your face, he's waiting to outplay you in neutral, and Tama P, he's not waiting for anything. He is just swinging, he is constantly trying to kill you, he is forcing the aggression, and that's why Bayo is so good as a character, because you can play her in so many different ways. You can be the aggressor, you can fall on the back foot, and no matter how you're playing the character, you're gonna have the damage output to back it up. And while I would have Lima as the 2nd best Bayo right now, I definitely think that he can reclaim that title as the best. It's gonna be a little difficult just because Tama P has him speeding up incredibly, and Bloom might just pop off at any event that he goes to, but Lima definitely has what it takes because he is unreal. And even though Lima played amazing, it was not amazing enough to take out DABUZZ, your winner of the final ever Low Tide City. And he was able to pick up wins on Z, Wilds, and PEABNUT to get into the top 8. Once in the top 8, he beats MUTEACE and Lima to get into that grand finals. Does lose the first set, but closes it out in the second one. And it should be noted that you have DABUZZ playing Olimar in that first set versus Lima, but Lima figures it out in the second one, so Rosalina, Old Reliable, has to come out and close. And I like that decision from DABUZZ. I think he should be playing Olimar in that matchup. Absolutely. He should be starting with the Olimar, but if it doesn't work out, you should go to the character that you're better at. Even though the match is worse, even though the character is way worse, he's just so good at Rosalina. Like, it doesn't make sense. His control over Luma is otherworldly. Like, it's not even comparable to other Rosalina players. Just the split-second decision-making that DABUZZ is able to make and the walling that he is able to create with this character. I can see why he's stuck with the Rosalina for so long, because even though I don't have a ton of faith in the character, I've got a lot of faith in DABUZZ. And even though this isn't a major win, he wasn't able to get his first major win of Smash Ultimate, and we all know it's going to happen at some point. He's able to take out players who he's going to face in the grand finals of these majors, but it just feels like whenever he does really well at the event, it just happens to not be a major. But he beat Lima, he beat MUTEACE. Those are world-class players. PEABNUT as well. I have a lot of faith that when the time comes and DABUZZ is in the grand finals of his next major, he's going to close it out. And with that, I thank you all for watching. Sport has been absolutely unreal as of late. If there's anything I left out, got wrong, or if you just want to say hi, leave a comment down below. Be sure to sub while you're down there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.